This is willpower.
Okay, wonderful. I'm so happy to have you because I'm getting to know the whole family. Matt Gallant here with us today, speaking about Bioptimizer's Newtopia and really the most important baseline piece of health, which is how to get a good night's sleep. So welcome.
It's great to be here. Sleep is absolutely one of my most passionate health topics personally. And I think for most people, it's one of the things that if they focus on a little bit, it'll have the biggest impact overall, not just on their health, but their aesthetics, cognitive performance, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it's awesome. I just, yesterday I was in the recording hole with Kelly and Juliet Starrett, Supple Leopard, Mobility King and Queen. And I said, I always, this is like a surprise breaker for you, but I always ask the same question at the end of the podcast, which is if you could go back and tell your younger self or maybe a newer listener something. So now you can prep for the end of the podcast, but something that you would have introduced to yourself as like to power your wellness into your adulthood, what would that thing be? And he looked at her and he said, we're going to say it on 3, 2, 1. And they took a space and they went sleep. And so it's more and more hopefully coming to the forefront with health and wellness coaches and practitioners. And you guys are doing such a great job supporting this process. Now I want to do the cocktail party introduction though of you, which is like Newts, Mr. Newts, for people who have listened before. Mark came on the podcast and spoke about Newtopia so beautifully, and also a lot of the tragedies he's had in his life and things that have gone on. And I think both of you guys are like, I always imagine you like best friendy, nerding out, white lab coat. I know it's not exactly like that, but just like in that way.
It's close. It's very close.
And he's got a little more maybe like 80s rock band that I think I have some intuition that maybe you keep him a little reeled in. I don't know. Maybe it's the other way around.
Good intuition.
But I want to hear a bit like you're at a cocktail party or you're at a mocktail party if you're not a drinker and you're socializing and you roll up to get a kombucha or a Nectar X cocktail and someone comes up to you and says, hey, what's your story? What do you do? What do you tell them?
We help people go from sick to superhuman.
It's lovely. I believe that that's true. That's great. It's a wonderful elevator pitch for what you do. And I've had Wade on the podcast as well, who's one of your partners, and really seen all of his videos over the course of time for education. I also want to just say that you help people go from sick to superhuman, but also there's a ton of education and research and coaching that comes through a lot of free content that you guys put out. That's so excellent for people to learn. So thanks for doing that. Oh, I see you have guitars in the background. So also there's that 80s rock band thing. I see. So now it's white lab coat and guitar playing, and I see where it's going. So I really want to talk a bit about this baseline of health, this like what I might say is one of the vital signs, right? Which is how well we sleep. And really just like how you've touched into that, because we can speak in a bit, I think, about some of the other formulas you have with Bioptimizers, but really speaking about this sleep piece and this sleep breakthrough, how did this come to be that you said, we need to be putting something into the marketplace and making it really appealing to consumers?
So a lot of the supplements we've created, almost every single one starting from Mass Science in 2005, have been created because we've wanted those solutions for ourselves. And sleep has been one of my biggest obsessions, and we can get some of the reasons why, for a long time, since my mid-20s. So again, it's really coming from selfish desires to create the greatest solution for myself. And I know if I create something that works for me, it'll work for a lot of people. It always has. And my goal is to systematically stop using every other company's supplements. I'm almost there. I think by the end of 2023, I'll be there. So yeah, sleep has been a big one. I've been using a lot of different molecules to try to improve sleep, and we'll talk about some of those. But to rewind to my 20s, I was obsessed with productivity. When I say obsessed, I was working 80 hours a week in the gym. I was studying marketing. I was recording a hard rock album. I was training twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening. I was married, obviously no TV. I didn't have time for that. But my goal was to be productive like 110 hours a week. So I had the not so bright idea of what if I reduce my sleep by 15 minutes every few nights and I'll adapt. So I started probably around like 7 hours, and then I was progressively decreasing time. When I got to the 5-hour zone, it was interesting because I needed to be hyper optimized. Otherwise I'd crash. Like I needed to just pound water all day. If I ate the wrong thing, instantly crash. I needed to train twice a day to just have energy. So that was kind of an interesting little part of the experiment. But when I got down to the 4-hour zone, that was it. My body just collapsed, and it took me about 2 months, 10 hours a night of sleep to recover. And then I read Power Sleep by James Moss. That was the first sleep book I read. And it was kind of ahead of its time. And it really sold me on going the other direction and sleeping 8-9 hours a night because of all the benefits. So that was my first kind of sleep crisis. But let's fast forward a few more years after that. I was monitoring my sleep with the Zeo, which was a predecessor to the Oura Ring. Got the Oura Ring, and the data said I was getting between 0 and 15 minutes of deep sleep a night. That coincided with my highest body fat reading ever in a DEXA scan. Coincided with my lowest testosterone reading ever, which was in the low 200s, and coincided with just me feeling like garbage pretty much every single morning, despite sleeping 9 hours a night. So that was the next light bulb moment. It's about sleep quality as much as quantity. So I just became obsessed with improving my sleep. I spent about $45,000+ on pretty much every sleep gadget, every sleep molecule. I sleep in a Faraday cage, custom made mattress. We can talk about all that stuff. But yes, it's been a long journey. And then for the last probably about 6 years, I've been just testing every sleep molecule that's come out, including a lot of stuff people probably don't know about, and just trying to find the right combination of molecules. Because, my advice to people is people psychologically want the one thing. However, to produce the most powerful effects possible, it's always combining things. It's always synergy. Einstein talked about compound interest being the eighth wonder of the world. That's true for biology as well. So when we start combining things, combining modalities, I'm not just talking about a supplement, but darkness, cold, a good mattress, managing light from morning to night, et cetera, we can multiply the amount of deep sleep. So now I get about 90 minutes plus of deep sleep and 2+ hours of REM, sometimes 3. So yeah, it's just been transformative on my sleep quality. And of course, my body fat has gone down. My testosterone is normalized. And I just feel awesome when I wake up, which is, to me, the most important thing. I mean, yeah, Oura Rings are great. And we talk about the accuracy of them. That's about 60% accurate. But the biggest benefit is, and the biggest subjective measurement, in my opinion, is how do you feel when you wake up? And do you have energy throughout the day? So those are just, again, free subjective measurements that everybody can use to assess how rested they are.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot of us who got the Oura Ring in the beginning. I don't know if you're like me on this, but I was like, oh, data. I want to read the data. And I started to sort of have a moment where I had to pull back because just like I wouldn't check my score till noon, because otherwise I was getting up at 6 or 7 in the morning and it was like, how am I going to feel today? It was like placebo affecting myself into the energy of the day. And so that I sort of had to lean away from that. But you also just mentioned this thing, and I think I want to unpack a little bit of it. There's some great stuff in everything you just said. But can we talk a little bit about because you have such an expertise in this, sort of like the bio or the neurochemistry of sleep, just like talking about sleep molecules and just sort of educating the listeners and me on, what you mean by sleep molecules and just talking about that biochemistry of that, because I think that's why you've become such an excellent formulator. I want to say you're like a tinkerer too. Like, I don't know if there's a way you can tinker with molecules, but that's kind of what you guys do, and you specifically.
My favorite thing in the world by a long shot is to run experiments. So like marketing wise, I'm closing in on 20,000 A/B tests. And in the biolab at the Birch University in Syria, I think we're closing in on about 1,000. So nothing excites me more than running experiments, whether it's on myself, in the lab, on the website. Like, I just love the learning that comes from it. And the learning, I feel like a feedback loop is the most transformative system in the world. And that is the power of the Oura Ring. The Oura Ring allows us to get feedback after every night of sleep. And there's a lot of value that, especially early on. I think once your sleep is hyper optimized, the value of it for sleep is not as significant. But yeah, back to sleep molecules and neuromolecules. So let's just talk about the nervous system, because that's a huge part of this puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
So the nervous system has two different components, right? Sympathetic, which is, also known as fight, flight, freeze, but it's a spectrum. There's levels of fight, flight, freeze. It's really your beta brainwave state. It's a hyperfocus state. And then we have the other side, which is parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest state. It's our relaxation state. Is where we go when we sleep. So in a perfect world, and this is something that's really been significant for me for managing, for improving my health, and also I would say improving the quality of my life, is managing my nervous system. So most people wake up, turn on their phones, go off airplane mode, go right into a high beta brainwave state, which is sympathetic. And they just, maybe 30, 60 minutes later, go to work. They're in a sympathetic state throughout the entire day. Maybe they come home at night and, keep going, and then they crash, and then they rinse and repeat. So in a perfect world where, managing our nervous system throughout the day and just having a couple little 15, 20-minute breaks, going outside, playing with your kids, playing with your pets, hanging out with your partner, playing music, dancing, getting sun, movement, all of those things helps us shift a little bit to parasympathetic throughout the day. But it's really critical as we get closer to bedtime that we start shifting our nervous system over. As we shift our nervous system over, it will help slow our brain waves down, which is one of the main causes of insomnia. So when they look at insomniacs, they find that they have hyperactive beta brain waves. So one of the hacks is if you can increase your alpha brain waves, as again, maybe within about 90 minutes, 2 hours before bed, you will get a much better quality sleep. Like, probably the worst sleep you're going to have is you're in this high stress state. Maybe you're watching the UFC like I like to do on Saturdays. And all my friends will say the same thing, which is when we watch the UFC, their sleep quality is compromised that night. Like it just shows up on the data. It shows up the next day. And the reason is that we're in such a fight. We're literally in a fight, flight, freeze state as we're watching these fights, which is creating adrenaline and cortisol, which is obviously going to impact sleep. So we'll come back to cortisol because there's a really important sleep habit that we can do to lower cortisol. But we basically want to, again, shift our nervous system down, start reducing cortisol, reducing adrenaline, reducing noradrenaline as we get closer and closer to bed. Now, one of the most powerful things for that on a molecule level is magnesium. Magnesium will really help shift your nervous system from fight, flight, freeze to, again, rested and just rested and relaxed. So, 90 minutes, 2 hours, like if I find myself really jacked up, maybe two hours before bed, I'll take magnesium then. If I'm relatively relaxed, I'll take 2 capsules of magnesium breakthrough maybe an hour before bed. And then it'll hit you maybe 30 or 45 minutes later. But there's a couple of molecules we can use to directly impact our brainwaves. One of them is L-theanine. So L-theanine has been my favorite, like my go-to sleep molecule that I've used probably like 99% of nights for 5 or 6 years. 200 milligrams for me works incredibly well. It is it's an amino acid derived from green tea. And it's incredibly effective at inducing relaxation without drowsiness.
Mm-hmm.
And the big challenge for us as we were creating Sleep Breakthrough was creating something that would help people fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling refreshed. And the refreshed part means that we need to avoid things that create drowsiness. There was a lot of sleep molecules that we tried adding that made us feel drowsy and kind of a little bit sluggish the next day. And that's not what we want. Again, we want to really wake up feeling refreshed. So L-theanine increases alpha brain waves, again, induces relaxation. It's phenomenal. The other one is Pharma GABA. So GABA in general is, I would say, the molecule of chill. It's a really phenomenal molecule for just relaxing your entire brain. And there's a lot of different sources of GABA. We tried original GABA, but we found that Pharma GABA just hit harder. It's more effective.
Can you just speak
Yeah,
quickly
go ahead.
to like the difference between GABA and Pharma GABA? Because I see that a lot on labels and I think I'm not even 100% clear on it.
Yeah, so in the molecule world, people are always trying to create better versions of molecules. So Mitsubishi is actually the company that creates Pharma GABA, and it's just a better version. It hits harder, and if you look at all the data on Pharma GABA versus normal GABA, it beats it almost every single stat. So yeah, it feels experientially, probably feels about 50% stronger,
Okay.
and it just works better in my opinion.
Cool.
So yeah, again, GABA is the molecule of chill. And again, when looking at insomniacs, which we can learn a lot when we talk about sick to superhuman, we look at people that are sick and you look at the things that are compromising their health or the things that show up in their biomarkers. We can learn a lot. And they were about 30% more deficient in GABA than normal people. So again, GABA, that's a big clue. And again, that means that most of us would benefit from GABA. And again, what I love about it, it just produces a really powerful relaxation response and doesn't create that drowsiness effect. So Pharma GABA, Magnesium, L-theanine are really, really powerful. Now, I'll tell you the most surprising thing, and again, credit to Mark, Mr. Newts, for this. Mark was really bullish on potassium for sleep. And I was really familiar with potassium for hydration. Really potassium is known as the molecule of hydration. So I dived into the research. When we formulate products, we'll literally review hundreds of research papers on all the molecules and try to understand the mechanisms and then how do we potentiate these mechanisms. The potassium was mind-blowing because I stumbled onto this research they were doing on mutant flies. And what they found was that sodium excites neurons and potassium quiets them down. I did not know that until a few months ago.
Wow.
So potassium is really, really powerful at quieting down the brain as well as slowing down your heart a little bit. And of course, if you slow down your heart, your nervous system is going to relax. So potassium is really key for good sleep. And the other benefit of potassium is a lot of people wake up to go to the bathroom at night. And if you take potassium before bed, the likelihood of that happening diminishes because you're going to hold on to water instead of just peeing it out as you're drinking it. So potassium is a really big one. And I'll stop there because there's a bunch of other ones. But
I want to say to you that it's like, I feel like you're reading my mind. I feel like you crawled into bed with me because I have like two questions I really wanted to ask you because I got the sleep breakthrough a couple weeks ago. I've been taking all of Mag breakthrough was my first, from the moment it came out, I think I've been on it. All of my clients are on a lot of your products. The protein challenge in the world makes me on Magnesium. I'm low on HCl. So I'm like HCl breakthrough, I'm like all in on all of those. But the thing I really noticed, and it's like almost, it's not a shame that you said it. It's great that you said it. But the thing that I noticed is, and I wanted to ask you, so I got it about 2 weeks ago. I had it on the road. So I took it on the road with me. I was like pleasantly surprised that it's like a little evening treat because the flavor is so good. And I stayed at Freddie's house the last couple nights, my partner, and didn't have it with me. And I was like, my read in the morning for my heart rate was that my average heart rate after the 2 weeks of traveling and having it every night was significantly, like within reason, but significantly higher. Like the average heart rate was higher for the evening, both sleeps. And I felt a little different when I woke up and was like I didn't necessarily put two and two together, but I wondered if there was a correlation there. So question answered, really great. And practical experience, that makes me feel really, it makes me feel smart because now I know why. And also like, that's really like the proof is in the pudding for me.
let's talk about the big one. And the big one's melatonin.
Yeah,
So
we need to talk about that because, people are putting like 250 milligrams of melatonin in their booties with a suppository. And I'm not trying, I just really want to have this frank conversation for people who are listening because there are women in a perimenopausal and menopausal. It's the only way they can get sleep sometimes. There's, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm getting. There are books on it. There are doctors out there preaching it. And I'm not here to slander anyone. And also, I'm not sure if melatonin is a long-term solution. And so I'd love for you to talk about this. This is why this is the big one, because people get emotional about it.
Yeah, so melatonin is the number one sleep supplement in the world. It's a hormone. In many countries, it's a prescribed drug. And when they actually did some laboratory tests on melatonin, they found 400x difference, 40,000% differences in some of the actual melatonin amounts between, the worst and the best. Here's the big mind blower. Your brain will naturally produce 10 to 80, you ready for this? Micrograms naturally. So even a 0.5 milligram dose of melatonin is a mega dose. Now, in my opinion, and it's not always possible, and I want to make that clear, but it's always better to try to give your body the precursors, the building blocks, and the cofactors that it needs, and the lifestyle adjustments to naturally produce hormones versus using exogenous forms, again, when possible, right? And it's true for testosterone. It's definitely true for melatonin. Let's talk about the perfect way to generate melatonin naturally. And then I'll talk a little bit about when you might want to use melatonin, because I think there's a few circumstances that warrant it. So it starts in the morning. Okay? And again, all credit to Dr. Andrew Huberman for really just preaching over and over again about the benefits of light in the morning. So light is a signal to basically tell your brain this is the beginning of the day. Perfect world, wake up, go outside for 10, 20 minutes and get sunlight directly into your eyes, no sunglasses, no glass, no windows, no nothing. I really believe that 10, 15 minutes of just light walking, I'm not even talking about jogging, sprinting, working out, just movement in the morning, is probably the biggest bang for the minute that anybody can do health-wise. It increases your serotonin, your dopamine for the entire day. It increases your metabolism. The delta between moving 10 minutes and not moving in the morning is significant. And more importantly for sleep, it really tells your body this is the beginning of the day, and it primes your brain for when the evening should be. That's the first piece of the melatonin puzzle. The second piece is obviously about 90 minutes before bed. People need to start dimming the lights or wear blue light blocking glasses. I wouldn't say that blue light blocking glasses are absolutely necessary, but they're a good tool, especially if you want to, watch TV and things like that. Yeah. But it's really about lumens. So you need to diminish the light in your environment because melatonin destroys light second by second. It's very, very fast. And by the way, pro tip for anybody using melatonin, you need to ingest your melatonin in darkness. Like if you take melatonin and then you brush your teeth, the lights are on, by the time you probably hit the sock, that melatonin is useless. It's gone. So it's very...
Oh, wow. It's like, is it about like the half-life or like it's something about it? The light wanes it down?
The light is literally just destroying it.
Wow.
Second by second. Like within a couple of minutes, most of it is gone. I was told that a long time ago by neuroscientists, and it's come out very clearly in the research. So yeah, that's really, really important. And that's true. Like, let's say you were wearing blue light blocking glasses, your brain is shifting. Again, your brain thinks it's time to go to bed. And then you take off your glasses and you're brushing your teeth and the bathroom light's hitting your eyes. That will, again, really disrupt your natural melatonin production. Mm-hmm. So you really have to manage light until you're in bed and it's pitch black. That's really, really critical. There's some simple tricks people can do. I heard a really good one the other day I think I'm going to do, which is salt lamps. So I was doing a podcast on sleep. The guy said, yeah, I just put salt lamps, which of course, not very bright. Some people use these little sensor triggered child lights with like orange bulbs or red bulbs. So as people move throughout their house, they can see.
I got a little plug-in nightlight. That's a mini salt lamp. And I switched the bulb to red.
There you go.
It's a little extra, but it feels really cute.
Yeah. And again, that's ways you can see. And again, your brain is knowing that it's time to go to bed. But the last piece is while you're sleeping, it needs to be absolutely pitch black. I used to wear a sleep mask. The issue with the sleep mask is two things. One is your head needs to be 1 degree cooler than your body. That's, very old research. That's very well documented. And when you're wearing a sleep mask, I used to wake up and like my sleep mask was gone. I think my body just wanted to take it off my head. But the issue is your skin has photoreceptors. So even though you might be blocking the light from your eyes, if there's light hitting the skin in your face or your neck, it will disrupt your melatonin production, which has been shown clinically. So you really have to manage light, again, from morning to bed throughout your bedtime in order to maximize melatonin production. But that's not enough. I mean, that's key. That's critical. But the main thing you need to do is to give your body the melatonin precursors, the building blocks. So when we say precursors, what's a precursor? It's the building blocks that your body needs in order to create the target hormone, which in this case is melatonin. So that's where magnesium comes in. Magnesium is a phenomenal precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. So anything that increases serotonin is a really good idea before bed. And that's why some people, we could talk about food and sleep, but a lot of people will report like a teaspoon of honey really improve their sleep. Well, there's nothing special about the honey. What it is, it's the serotonin boost coming from the sugar, from the carbohydrates, that is increasing serotonin, and that's helping them build more melatonin. And I've noticed that that's one little sleep hack is maybe about 10 grams of carbohydrates. So sometimes I'll do about half a cup of fruits before bed. And especially if I'm doing like a multi-day fast, I've done the A/B test on that. And if I take about 10 grams of carbohydrates, my sleep is so much better than if I don't. So carbohydrates before bed, again, just a little bit, about 10 grams is a really good strategy. But magnesium is phenomenal. So that's a really important one. And then the next piece of the puzzle is cofactors. So we have a partnership with the Birch University in Sarajevo. We have 16 genius biologists, chemists, people with PhDs in probiotics doing nonstop experiments. And I would say the most validating and not that surprising to me revelation has been the effectiveness of cofactors. We're talking with almost every type of product. It's a 100 to 300% improvement by just adding the right cofactors. So cofactors will transform that building block, that precursor. They're the ones that will help convert it into that melatonin. So P5P, which is a bioactive form of vitamin B6, is a really phenomenal cofactor for magnesium. And then we talked a little about potassium. So magnesium is a cofactor for a lot of minerals, like hundreds and hundreds of different enzymatic reactions in the body. Let's just talk about the other sleep minerals. So calcium is a really important one. So again, our grandmother's advice about drinking a glass of warm milk was solid advice. And what the calcium shows is that it improves REM sleep specifically. And it's a cofactor for the tryptophan to convert into serotonin, which again, we already said it's a building block for melatonin. And then there's zinc orotate. And zinc is a phenomenal mineral for the nervous system. And it's a direct cofactor for melatonin. So the magnesium, the zinc, the potassium, and the calcium are really phenomenal for, again, shifting your nervous system, giving your body the precursors, and really priming your body for natural melatonin production. Let's just talk briefly about when to use melatonin. And I've got some really controversial dosage recommendations.
Okay, cool. I want to just, but as we move into that, I want to just say this thing about what you guys really excel in when you talk about the zinc orotate and all the different iterations of these molecules out there, that this is what I think you guys excel at, and is really figuring out which one, like in order to get the body to absorb correct me if I'm wrong, absorb the minerals, absorb what you want, you have to attach it to something. And I think that's the place that is very confusing in the marketplace with zinc, with magnesium, with that people are attaching it to all different components. And so that's just like a sidebar. I think that's important when you talk about the different things that are in this formulation and all of your formulations, is you guys are really digging deep to find out what specific variant, if you will, of magnesium or zinc or whatever it is, and you're putting in the formula, and choosing the wrong one, which the general layman like me, who is not have a background in biochemistry or understanding of these molecules to the level that you guys do. This is why you are the experts, because you are choosing the right variants every single time and time again through the research. So I want to shout that out because that's important. If I see one more client with magnesium oxide in their cabinet as their only magnesium, it's like, hey, let's just chuck that out the window, more or less, you know?
Do you want a world debut announcement that I think you're going to be really excited about?
Yes.
So one of the main things we've been doing in the biolab has been literally rebuilding every single enzymatic formula, including HCl breakthrough, from scratch. So here's another mind blower. With every single molecule, and let's just use HCl betaine, which is obviously one of the key ingredients in HCl breakthrough, which I know you really enjoy. We found a 300% difference from the best version to the worst version. So we literally got every single enzyme we could from around the world, like every proteolytic enzyme, every lipolytic enzyme, every amylase, every betaine. We tested every single one by one, and the difference is 300% from the best to the worst. Same thing with pepsin. I just reviewed the data this morning, but here's the announcement. We have just completed the new version of HCl breakthrough. So all of our digestive products are going to be re-released next year, and every single one is significantly stronger than the previous versions. But yeah, just to back up what you're saying, with HCl breakthrough as an example, we literally tested every type of magnesium as a cofactor for HCl breakthrough. And it's always amazing to see the differences from type of product to type of product. And again, the data doesn't lie. So that's why we're so heavy on these type of experiments.
Yeah. So awesome. Killer. All right, let's go back to that melatonin thing that you were just I interrupted you, but that you were going to talk about. That's melatonin and dosage recommendations, and if and how or when people are taking it.
So there's another big issue with melatonin, and then we'll get into potential applications. There's a huge portion of the population that has a genetic variant that causes them to wake up about 2 or 3 hours before their target wake up time. I'm one of them. So if I use melatonin the way most people recommend, I'll wake up literally after 5 hours of sleep. And what happens, there's this spike in body temp. And when your body increases your body temperature, you will wake up. And typically that happens at the 7-hour mark, or 7.5 hours, or 8 hours, depending on.
Do we call this dawn phenomenon, or is that something different?
Sorry, say it again.
Do we call that dawn phenomenon, or is that something different?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So
again, with melatonin, people will wake up 2 or 3 hours prior. And I do. Some people don't have that genetic variant, but a lot of people do. I've heard Tim Ferriss talk about it, Andrew Huberman, many people. So that's a major issue, which to me always disqualified melatonin from being a solution for me personally, which was, I think, a good thing because it led us to looking at all these other pathways. However, there's a few situations which I think warrants using melatonin. One is you're traveling. I would only recommend using melatonin if you're moving, let's say 3+ hours in your time zone. Obviously, if you're flying overseas, it's a really good idea. And I only recommend using it for 2 nights. Like if you talk to people that don't typically use melatonin, and I've heard this many times, the first 2 nights they feel good. The third day they use it, they don't. They'll feel hungover. So 2 nights is good enough to help reset your circadian clock. And again, use the light in the morning and have a big breakfast in the morning and do a big workout. If you wake up and you go, again, sunlight, movements, big breakfast, and then use melatonin that one more time that night, typically jet lag is gone. So that's one. 2 is as an emergency parachute. So again, maybe once every 2 months, I'll have that night where I'm just too wired. Maybe I watch the UFC or something and I'm just too excited. And I just can't slow down my brain waves and I'm just, the cortisol's taken over. It's a good hack. You can basically hack yourself to sleep with melatonin. The third way I'll use it, and I just did a really intense business trip. It was 4 cities, 5 days. And I was in New York and I had to wake up after 4.5 hours of sleep. I will use melatonin as a way to wake up after 4.5, 5 hours and feel good. So I'm using my genetic variant as a hack to feel good after 5 hours. And that's about it. I mean, those are really the circumstances where I think melatonin makes sense. But here's the mind blower. In my opinion, you only want to use about 80 to 100 micrograms. Now, you cannot do that with pills. So we have another product that's not released yet. It will be released over the next few months called Dream Optimizer. And it's a spray. And as Mark and I were working on it, we were like, how do we help people microdose melatonin? So it's 80 micrograms per spray ends up being the dose. And for me, I do 4 sprays and that's enough. So literally I'm doing about 75 micrograms and that's perfect. Like sometimes, if I go even past 100 micrograms, I'll get some of those negative consequences that I talked about. So I just think that people are just mega dosing melatonin. And I'm not saying
people aren't taking micrograms, they're taking milligrams. They're taking and then there's all this stuff that keeps coming out about their testing. This is why sourcing is so important. They're testing it and they're like, oh, it actually has 10. It's actually like a hammer. It's not really a pill. It's like 10x the amount that says on the label, or it's very inconsistent. But I love that you're calling the spray Dream Optimizer, because 2 sprays is all. I snuck some out of Mr. Nutz's bag when he visited here. Mm-hmm. And 2 sprays is all I need. It's not even that much. And I don't use it every night.
That's 36 micrograms.
Yeah. And I dream like a crazy woman. So I didn't even know the name of it, but I'm always whoa, I had all these visions. I don't know. Well, it's they would give us anti-malarials when I would travel into third world countries and, back in when we traveled more, or whatever. And that would always give me crazy dreams. And it's the only thing I could liken to it, to be have these really visual, colorful, really interesting dreams. Does that happen to you as well?
No, that's what it's designed to do.
Okay.
We've designed that to maximize REM sleep. Let's just talk about the benefits of deep sleep versus REM.
For sure.
So REM is where you have a lot of emotional processing. It's where a lot of your neurotransmitters are produced, which obviously will set the foundation for a great day or a bad day. Like people will say, I'm in a bad mood. They probably have had very poor REM sleep for a few nights in a row. So REM sleep is critical for your brain. And then deep sleep is where a lot of the magic happens hormonally. There's something called a prolactin cycle. And the prolactin cycle helps your body naturally produce growth hormone and testosterone and all these other hormones that are really important for rejuvenation and just, metabolic health and all these other, really important things. Even blood sugar. If you have, and I've talked to people with CGMs and it's really fascinating. I've heard people tell me, I had one bad night of sleep. I eat the same thing I normally eat and my blood sugar the next day was completely out of control. And that's because, again, they probably didn't have a lot of good deep sleep that night. So 90 minutes is a good target for deep sleep. Let's go back to cortisol. And there's a really, really critical thing that took me a long time to embrace, because I'm a natural night owl, or as they call it in the chronotypes, I'm a natural wolf. I like staying up. I like the nightlife. I like just being alive, being awake. So for me, just wanting to go to bed and going to bed at a reasonable time has always been a challenge since I'm a kid. And we've all heard that classic advice, or that cliche, that 1 hour of sleep before midnight is worth 2. The reality is, if 1 hour of sleep before your cortisol kicks in, before your second wind kicks in, is worth 2, that is, in my opinion, an absolute fact. So what happens is, let's say you typically go to bed at 12, just use that as a round number. You go to bed at midnight, and for whatever reason, you stay up past midnight. It's 12:30, it's 12:45. What will happen at one point is your body will produce cortisol to keep you awake. And I think it's an evolutionary survival mechanism, because obviously if there was reasons for us to stay awake to protect the tribe, we needed to be alert and energized. And what happens is that will wreck your deep sleep that night. As soon as the cortisol kicks in, you're going to feel good. And I think a lot of people, myself included, I became addicted to that. The cortisol actually feels pretty good. And then you can stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning. And I used to work in these kinds of things. So really, as soon as you start yawning, that's a signal that get ready for bed and, try to maybe be in bed within like 30 minutes, 45 minutes of that yawning starting. And I think a really important sleep habit is have that target bedtime. Let's say it's midnight. And then about 1 hour before, again, 90 minutes before, turn off the lights, dim the lights, put on your blue light blocking glasses. 1 hour before, drink sleep breakthrough, take 2 capsules of magnesium breakthrough. You're giving your body all the precursors. And by 11:40, 11:45, you want to go to bed. Sleep breakthroughs kicking in, magnesium breakthroughs kicking in. And that's been transformational for me. Like, I want to go to bed now. Otherwise, I'm just going to pass out on the couch, which I never used to do.
Yeah. And that's like the unwind stack for sure, is like 2 mag breakthrough and sleep breakthrough. I want to just get did you guys research like flavor profiles, or did you just pick the one that I really always dreamed of having, or what? Because it's like a blue raspberry is maybe what I would call it. I don't know if you've given it a real specific flavor profile, but it's cool. And then also people are like, as with all my Newtopia, people are like, what is in that glass? When I have, sleepover parties.
Yeah. I mean, we're always trying to make all of our drinks taste as tasty as possible. And first of all, there was fortunately nothing really nasty to try to cover up in this. We'll talk about some of the other ingredients, but there was nothing really weird. So yeah, we really like the idea of a beautiful blue color. So we use blue spirulina as a colorant. And spirulina is a legit superfood. Like, people like to throw the word superfood around. My definition of a superfood is a food that has additional biological benefits outside of the macro and micronutrients. And what's fascinating about spirulina is that there's some interesting research indicating that it can actually stimulate natural stem cell production. So I'm just a super fan of spirulina in general. And, it tastes good. It doesn't have like that weird green flavor like chlorella and other things. Yeah. So yeah, it's beautiful. And then for sweetness, we use stevia. And we played around with katemfe, which is this fruit from Africa, which is actually a protein. And then there's nothing else. I mean, it's just a organic berry, and that's it. So yeah, it's a really interesting flavor. And you mix it with about 4 ounces, 6 ounces of water. Again, for those of you that tend to wake up at night, you got to manage your water, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours before bed. So just 4 ounces of water, mix 1 scoop, drink it, and that's it.
Yeah. So stupendous. Should we talk about a couple of the other ingredients that are in there, so we get a little coverage on that piece?
Yeah. So about glycine. I think glycine is one of the biggest amino acid deficiencies out there. I think we could do an entire episode on glycine and all the benefits from collagen production and so on, but we'll keep it focused on sleep. So glycine is one of the molecules. Like, when Mark and I were formulating, I said, Mark, we need to get something that lowers body temp. Okay. We didn't talk about temperature yet, but body temp, is really, really critical. You basically want to sleep in a cave. So glycine is one of the molecules that will lower your core body temperature by increasing blood flow to your extremities. Glycine will, again, drop your body temp. It will promote faster sleep onset, and it increases REM. And probably my favorite thing about it is that those nights where maybe you only sleep 6 hours or 5.5 for whatever reason, and this shows up in the data, people feel much better the next day with glycine than if they don't. So again, it's a phenomenal sleep molecule. We use about 3 grams. And again, people can push glycine dose to like 10, 15 grams a day. Like, glycine is just such a really critical thing. We're working on another skincare consumable, and glycine is definitely a really critical part of that. But yeah, glycine is really powerful for sleep. And just by itself, it's really good. But when you stack all the other things, it's phenomenal. So yeah, we talked about Pharma GABA. We talked about L-theanine. We talked about the sleep minerals. And then on the magnesium front, we use magnesium bisglycinate, 125 milligrams. It has the best data on sleep. Again, we definitely think that combining magnesium breakthrough with it increases the effectiveness even more. We've had thousands of people. You can go to Amazon, go to our website, just read all the reviews on magnesium breakthrough and sleep. It's been transformational for, again, tens of thousands of people. So
I bet hundreds of thousands of people at this point. It's really amazing. And it's just, I just want to touch on that, on Mag Breakthrough from a formulation standpoint, right? Like you've taken all the guesswork with so much of the product that you've made. You've taken the guesswork, the dosage, the how much, the this, like I have charts and charts and charts. And as a biohacker, I'm already taking a lot. And the last thing I want to do is like try to be making my own mix of things when there's people out there who really know how to do it well. And I think I always, whenever I talk, you don't know this, but whenever I talk about magnesium breakthrough, I give a voice to it because it's like, it feels like magnesium breakthrough because it is a breakthrough. It really is. And that piece is because you have seven different elements of magnesium in there. And that's
7 plus the cofactors. Again, people are sleeping on cofactors. There's a pun for you. No, they really are. And, we have the proprietary humic fulvic mineral blend, and we have the manganese. So yeah, the cofactors have a significant impact in combination. And we really believe that the magnesium blend itself is a cofactor blend. And let's just talk about synergy. We saw the same thing as we were rebuilding Magnesium 4.0, which is coming out next year. So we tested every single protease, right? We found the best ones. And then we started combining them. As we were combining them, it was synergistic. It wasn't 1 + 1 = 2. It was 1 + 1 = 4. And then we added a third one. It was equals 7. And then added a fourth one. And now it's equal 12. So people are just underestimating the power of synergy and cofactors. And that's really the magic in magnesium breakthrough.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And it's like also the amount of bottles I used to take beforehand. And I want to say it hits harder. It's like it does. We're talking a lot about sleep, but really just for me during the course of the day too, like I have a magnesium in my morning routine because like stress levels, right? However I'm feeling, and it seems to make me feel a bit more chill in general. And I think you and I were talking before I hit the record button, just saying I did a brief a fuck it episode, my short episode of magnesium. And it's like in the research, people used to say it's a cofactor in more than 300, biological functions. But it's like, if you really dig in, I think it's over 600. There's just so much that the body needs. And so when I recommend, people will say all the time, like, I have a budget to do whatever. What are what are the 3 desert island supplements? And always, always, always Mag Breakthrough is on there. It's like, it's pretty wild. So let's talk about some other components of sleep. Like we mentioned temperature. Maybe we want to get into that a bit to see how people are managing temp. And what are the recommendations you have for like how to keep the bedroom or the house? Or we can all move to Panama and down and, hang out with you if you want.
Well, Panama is not a great, you need to hack your environment to get good sleep. Obviously, it's hot and humid here.
Yeah.
But back to that era where I was getting 0 to 15 minutes of deep sleep, what was happening was I was sweating 3 to 4 pounds of water at night. And keep in mind, my bedroom was 16 degrees Celsius, 65, 67 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was still losing that much water. Why? Because the body heat that was being trapped between my body and the mattress was so significant that I would just be sweating the entire night. And obviously I'm waking up dehydrated. I was probably 1.5% to 2% dehydrated in the morning. And if you look at the literature on dehydration, even 1% has a significant impact. So the chili pad, there's some other solutions, but I've just been a huge super fan of the chili pad since it's come out. And their new V3 version is awesome. But having something that helps keep your body cold or cool between the mattress and your body is one of the greatest investments I've ever made in my sleep. Like that's a game changer. Because again, just having the environment be super cold wasn't enough for me. So I really like having the chili pad and then a weighted blanket on top. I'm from Canada, so one of my favorite parts of winter was having like 5 or 6 blankets on top of me as a kid. It just felt good.
Yeah.
It really felt good. The room was really
good
cold.
For your nervous system, yeah.
Yeah, I think it does really help make you feel kind of cradled. And I think that helps you just, like you said, shift your nervous system a bit. So I like having a weighted blanket, the chili pad, and then a really cold room. I chill my room like 2 hours, 3 hours before. So when I go in my bed, it's just like, feels great. So yeah, cold is critical. And now back to body temp. I know that you can program it, and the machines are getting more sophisticated, and basically they're spiking the temperature before your wake up time. So the chili pad, some other devices are getting more sophisticated where it's really, really cold as you're falling asleep, which helps maximize your deep sleep. And then as you get closer and closer to wake up time, it'll start rising the temperature and helps you wake up feeling better.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And
that's
the
basically
new one
it.
is called the Sleep Doc Pro, which I have, which is so been helpful. And now you can just set it and forget it for timing. And I think HRV, the new app that's come out. So there's so many, people talk about, when we talk about sleep and we talk about cooling effects and we talk about budgets, there's low hanging fruit out there. And I like some of these devices, I'm a bit like you, some of the, I have my supplements, and then I have my Sleep Doc Pro from Sleep Me, and I have my weighted blanket because I need to be swaddled like I was 3 years old and all of that. And if people ask me, where do you put your funds? I think it's like scale your closets or your cabinets, your cupboards for what, there's lots of people taking lots of supplements that are either unnecessary or they're just taking it because somebody said to take it and they're not having some understanding of, like, especially if it's an obscure supplement. Oh, I read about this thing that's written, I always say to my women, by a man who's like, doesn't know. We don't need iodine, or maybe we do, but we should lab test and not guess. And then the investments that we're making in the specific supplements from companies like you, and maybe it's a weighted blanket, maybe it's a chili pad or a Doc Pro or whatever, but it's from a budgetary standpoint, I'd like to think you agree. It's one of the things we need to save our money to be able to correlate. Or maybe you live in the Arctic and you can open a window, but just that's an important piece, right? Because there's all of this is people are like, where do I spend my funds on sleep? Like what's the best, deal? And I'm a big proponent of red light. And I will also say, get something that's going to hibernate you in the bedroom, and then get your butt outside and get in the light. If before you go to the red light panel, go to the sleep setup. Are you sleeping well? So do you have any recommendations from where do you go first? And besides Sleep Breakthrough, which of course we need to go there because it's just like the most reasonably priced solution to some of this that we've been talking about. But temperature, any other things that you're using? You said, oh, we get up in the morning and I turn my airplane mode off. And I think not everybody does that, but you said you slept in a Faraday cage. And so that definitely deserves describing.
Yeah. Again, let me walk quickly through the 45 grand I've spent, and I'll give you my opinion on the bang for the buck. I agree. I think that Sleep Breakthrough, number one, number two. And the reason I say that is, again, like I've been on the road, and obviously like I love traveling. But the one thing that I don't like about traveling is just moving away from my whole sleep setup. However, the last couple of trips I've done, I did a 3-week, really intense trip to Europe and a couple trips in the US last few months. Sleep Breakthrough has been a game changer for taking, let's say, a bad night of sleep and making it good. So it's really impactful. Of course, I still sweat a lot more than I would at home and all of these things, but at least I can, move the needle up a couple of notches compared to what I would otherwise. But yeah, I think the chili pad would be the number one investment. I'd probably pick a chili pad with a average mattress over a great mattress with no chili pad. Second thing the third thing would probably be the mattress. And I spent like 6 months researching mattresses a few years ago. And what I realized was, if you're a side sleeper, what you want is you need to try to spread out the pressure per square inch as evenly as possible from your head to your toes. There's only one type of mattress that'll do that, which is a memory foam mattress, something that you can sink into. Now, if you're a back sleeper, this is less of an issue. You can go with a firmer mattress because the pressure is being spread out. Now, why is spreading the pressure so important? A few reasons. One, and the most important, is that your body will toss and turn as soon as there's blood flow constriction. So if you have wide hips, if you're a woman with wide hips, or if you're a man with wide shoulders, or for wherever there's too much pressure, your body will toss as soon as the blood flow starts getting constricted. And you're not aware of that. It's just happening naturally. So by spreading out the pressure, your tossing and turning will go down dramatically and your deep sleep will improve. So again, if you are a side sleeper, you really need to get a good foam mattress, memory foam mattress. In my opinion, Essentia is the best. I was really looking at all the materials that a lot of companies are using, and like 6 months of off-gassing. I didn't want that. The other thing I love about Essentia is it's got different levels of density or softness. And if you have wider shoulders, if you have wider hips, if you're a shorter person, if you're heavier, you need more softness. If you're taller, if you're narrow, if you don't weigh as much, then you can go with a firmer mattress. But again, what's great about Essentia is they have, like, again, the custom made version, and they can customize your side versus their side. Most people don't need that. And by the way, they've just come out with their brand new materials, which I tested out at Dave Asprey's event. And man, it's next level. So I don't have that one. I've got the custom made one, but they've really made a really significant improvement. So I think the mattress is key. And I legitimately sell pretty much every materialistic possession I have before I would get rid of my mattress. Like car, no question about it. Like all of these things to me pale in importance compared to a good mattress. So I would say that's a really big one. PEMF devices, I do not recommend for sleep. Like I've tried just about every PEMF device, from Earth Pulse to Beamers to whatever. And it's been hit or miss. Like some nights it seemed to improve sleep, and other nights it seemed to kind of wreck my sleep. I tried the ones that had all the DARPA research that would pulse delta brain waves that was synchronized with your deep sleep. Dream, DREEM, came out with a headset that did that. Philips came out with a headset that did that. And again, it was just hit or miss. So I think that maybe at some point, and I'm a fan of PEMF devices, don't get me wrong, but for sleep, not so much. I feel like none of them consistently improve sleep over time. It was just too hit or miss. Let's talk about the oxygen ionization machines. There's a machine called Elanra. It's from Australia, and it produces this hypercharged oxygen molecule that seems to improve sleep. Like that's one of the devices where I feel fresher the next day when I use it. And then let's talk about the Nano V. So the Nano V, if you use it long enough, it will shift your nervous system to parasympathetic. So for people that
do you mean long enough over time, or long enough in one session? Long
enough in one session. So typically 60 to 90 minutes, if you use it that long, which is a little longer than what they typically recommend, almost everybody feels a significant nervous system shift, which will really prime you for bed. And what's cool about that, you can kind of use it while you're watching TV or doing things.
Yeah. And that's exclusion zone water. And it feels like it doesn't feel like a facial steam, but it's nothing that's really, it's not hard to use. You just put it on and get close to it.
Yeah. And one of my experiments I have lined up is pump that in my Faraday cage while I'm sleeping, which leads us to Faraday cages. So EMF pollution, electromagnetic frequency pollution, I think has different levels of impact for different people. And when I used the Faraday cage, I had zero improvements in any of my sleep metrics. And I've talked to other people that said the same thing. It does seem that some people are more sensitive. The thing about EMF is that it is distant dependent. I mean, if you're literally right next to a Wi-Fi, it will have a much bigger impact than if it's in the back of the room. And obviously, I'm in Panama. Every wall is made out of cement. Even though I see the Wi-Fi's, I think the signals are really faint. One thing I did notice.
People need to get their devices out, their routers out from under their beds.
Yeah, again, no routers in the bedroom. Put your phone on airplane mode. Put your Oura Ring on airplane mode. And I did notice that if I didn't put my Oura Ring on airplane mode, it did seem to negatively impact my sleep. And again, it's directly against your skin. So I think that the Oura Ring should definitely be on airplane mode, and again, put everything in airplane mode. But honestly, I don't think it's
you sleep in a Faraday cage. Did you use the paint to make the walls so that the room is like that? Do you have a specific setup, or how did you tackle that?
Yeah, it's called lessemf.com. It looks like a mosquito net. It's made out of silver. I have a silver layer underneath the bed. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. It literally looks like those mosquito nets you'll see in Africa. tropical environments. But yeah, I frankly, I don't think it moved the needle that much.
Yeah.
And then I've tried, I think, every commercial. Let's talk about sleep tracking. This is important.
Yeah.
So I've tried every sleep tracker. Here's what's really important to realize. The Oura Ring, the Fitbit, the Whoop, all of them are about 60% accurate for determining the exact amount of deep sleep and REM sleep. Why is that? Because they're only using secondary metrics. I still think they're good devices. I think that the readiness score and the nervous system scores are very accurate. We hired in 60, which is really valuable. But the sleep data, in terms of determining how much deep you actually got or how much REM you actually got, is not very good. The only way you can get good sleep data is to use an EEG headset. So if you go to a sleep lab, they're using electrodes. That's really the gold standard. Dream, DREEM, which I mentioned earlier, they have probably the best headset that you can use to get data, but unfortunately they pivoted and they're no longer selling to consumers. It's researchers only. So there's really no consumer device that I'm aware of that can get you accurate, deep, and REM sleep. Here's the good news though. The block of time of deep plus REM that these devices are reporting seems to be pretty accurate, but it just cannot accurately differentiate between deep and REM. So I've had people come up to me, they show me their Oura Ring scores and they're like, I'm getting 10 minutes of deep and 4 hours of REM, but I feel good. And I say, well, don't worry, you're probably getting like 90 minutes of deep and 2.5 hours of REM. Like that block of time is accurate, but you just can't tell without tracking your brain waves where you're at. So
yeah, and it's a nice comparison. This is like a thing that's talked about a lot, I think, amongst our community and people in health and wellness now. It's like still nice to have some data to say, oh, I can see my overall, rises and falls, the peaks and valleys going on, because there is probably something about the flow of that. I also like that some of it breaths per minute. It's like a breath worker and stuff. I'm really like interested in that. And and then there's like a little bit of this good old fashioned, like just I wanted to layer into the sleep piece, that good old fashioned, like little bit of meditation or a little bit of down regulation, nasal breathing is a nice thing. Like for me, that's like what it's about when I'm doing a nighttime stack, and even nights when I'm ruminating and I have enough of the devices and the fancy stuff. But if I'm in like a hotel, or I was like teaching my breath and cold training weekend in a no Wi-Fi place, it was so beautiful in nature. And I was thinking about the next day, excited, right? Like you watch UFC, I watch just like A Christmas Carol, and I'm like so excited about it that I still have a tough time sleeping. But utilizing the breath, taking your mag breakthrough and your sleep breakthrough, and then I utilize the breath, even when I'm as a coach saying, I'm never going to be able to fall asleep. It's like 5 minutes or less of doing like 2x breathing, long nasal exhales, and really in the right environment, right? Not with like a screen in my face or whatever, that I can actually get myself to fall asleep. And so I think that there's a combination of that. A lot of these tools are amazing. I love that you gave us a little mini review on like prioritization for the tools that you've used, and like, damn, you went deep.
yeah, and actually one of the cheapest things people can do is blackout curtains. Like I live in the city, so I have 2 layers of blackout curtains. Like I cannot see my hand while I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
So, go to Amazon, they're really inexpensive, and that should be one of the first things. And, it's relatively cheap to do that. So that's a big one. And then, thousands and thousands and thousands on every sleep molecule, including sleep peptides and sleep drugs and growth hormones, secretagogues, and all that stuff. I never found that any of the growth hormones, secretagogues, like it always disrupted my sleep. I get a spike in body temp. So it was, theoretically, and some people seem to get an improved sleep from the growth hormone secretagogues, but none of that stuff ever worked for me. So yeah.
And we are all bio-individual. And also, I mean, I a lot of the things you covered today, I'm like, this is amazing. He's just confirming what's happening in my body for the things I'm taking. And so that's super beautiful. I just have a couple more questions for you. I love getting an education from the three of you, from you and Mark and Wade. And also just, it's nice to spend a little more time with you, because you're the person I get to spend the least amount of time with. And Newtopia, I just want to ask you what your favorite stack is, because people are getting more and more familiar with Newtopia. I'm loving playing with it. I have a few clients that are getting the monthly box, and just it's really a nice opportunity to run the gamut of different types of nootropics. And I'm wondering what your favorite stack is.
First of all, Xamarin 2.0 is weeks away from shipping.
Oh, amazing.
It tastes so much better. We changed the GABA to Pharma GABA because, again, it hits harder and it's cleaner. So I'm going to do a few sprays just to honor that.
Okay, do that.
It
I know I have a bottle on the shelf.
It's incredible strawberry flavor. I would say like my number one thing I've been using, even months before it came out, has been Collagenius. Collagenius, for those of you that don't know, is a hyper concentrated 4 mushroom blend. We got lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, and chaga. And the BDNF boosts from the lion's mane and the ATP boost from the cordyceps and the calming effect from the reishi is just phenomenal. That product's just been a grand slam. So that's just been a go-to every day. That's kind of my foundation. I'd probably say the products I take the most are Brain Flow, Upbeat, Nectar, and then if I have a long work day, it's Apex or Focus or Ultimate Focus. So yeah, and then Xamarin throughout the day.
Yeah.
By the way, you want another world debut?
I want all these world debuts. I'm going to release this tomorrow if we keep doing these debuts so I can break it open.
So the next flavor of the first flavor of Collagenius is this incredible called Chocolicious. We use a couple of different cacaos from around the world, from Ecuador and from Dominican Republic, and it's just amazing, right? The next one is salted caramel, and it's just it's awesome. So yeah, it's amazing. We're really, really excited about it, and should be coming out probably in a few months. So,
my God, that sounds delicious. I just, when Collagenius was first coming out, I was like, oh, like how am I really gonna? It's almost 6 months now. I switched to decaf. I know it's like so boring, but I switched to decaf because I love the ritual of coffee. Mm-hmm. I finally found a coffee company that made a good decaf. It took me months, like how you research the bed. I was like, where's the robust, flavorful decaf? Doesn't exist. It does.
Which is your brand?
I like Life Boost. It's super lovely. Mm-hmm. And it's like mycotoxin free and double tested. And I don't know, like dried beans by nuns on a mountaintop in the sunshine, whatever it is. But it's amazing. And the biggest reason it's amazing is they make a dark decaf and it actually tastes just like a coffee. It doesn't feel like a watered down version. And I was like, oh, am I really going to change my whole routine of like putting coconut oil and putting a little butter that I do sometimes and all these I have different things I do every day. And now it's like, it's just easy. It's just a scoop. It's got everything in it. I put a scoop of Collagenius in the coffee and I blend it. And if I'm on the road, I can use I have a hot cup that's got a sealed top and I can just shake it. And it's just like you took all of the, part of me was like, oh, it's no longer 20 minutes. And also I'm like, oh, it's no longer 20 minutes. This is amazing. I can brew my coffee and put a Collagenius scoop in it. And there's nothing else it needs. It's so beautiful. So like shout out to that and shout out to like, great new flavor. I'm ready. I'm ready for it. So cool. And then not that you asked, but I'm going to tell you anyway, that Apex is like my dream stack, just my dream nootropic. It's just almost every podcast I do, when I really feel like I just need verbal acuity, it's like coming out my ears. So it's pretty magic. So thanks for that one specifically. The one I cannot take is the focus savagery, because I can take it. And I've said this before, I can take it, but I need to be alone because I'm like so hyper in everything that I'm doing that maybe my brain chemistry has a little bit of that. I don't know if you know the Peak Brain Institute and Dr. Andrew Hill, he's out in Cali, and he was like, it's amazing. Your alpha wave states are like a sports car like I've never seen before. And I was like all proud of myself, like, oh, good brainwave state. And then he said to me right after, too bad you're driving with the emergency brake on, like with all these other things that came up on my QEEG scan. So I continue to like be so curious about what's happening in brainwave state, how I can shift these things, how I can improve sleep. And I'm so thankful for just Bioptimizers, for you, for Nootopia existing in the world to really be able to, this is what you're talking about. This is like sick to superhuman. You make me feel like I'm superhuman. So thank you for doing all this. I think you love it. But also, or I know you love it, But also, it's like, thank you so much for nerding out and pulling together all of these molecules in a way that just really supports people optimizing so many parts of their lives in a way where we don't have to use exogenous sources, let's just say, that aren't easy to get or, just challenging to utilize. I'm super appreciative of it. And now I'll just ask you the one last thing, which is you're not allowed to say Bioptimizers or Newtopia as the thing. And we already know that you're a sleep master. But and the people who are listening to this, who may be newer listeners to some of this conversation, who may not be showing up with the degrees and the expertise that you have, and as if you were going back to tell your teenage rocker self, what are the things, or what's the thing, the one thing you could say to yourself that if you had listened then, that would have helped you step into your wellness more powerfully?
Get sober.
Yeah.
I got sober at 32. But really my alcoholism, drug addiction started at 12. It was a progressive journey, and I was functional till I hit about 28. From 28 to 32, it was complete debauchery and dysfunction. So yeah, I feel like I lost a good 5-6 years, because even when I came back, it took me a couple of years to recover my brain function, which, that started the whole journey with, lion's mane and fish oil and all that stuff, and neurofeedback, which I'm a huge mega fan of. But yeah, I think getting sober earlier would have saved me a few years of pain and suffering. So that would be my number one advice. Get sober.
Yeah.
Get sober now. Because I really, I started drinking at 12, and if I would have done an alcoholic quiz at like 12, 13, I would have passed already as an alcoholic. Like I was always a binge drinker, blackout drinker right out of the gate, and then pivoted to using drugs because I was actually more functional on drugs than alcohol, like, weed and acid and all these other things. I'm like, okay, this is better. I'm not as crazy on these things as I am on alcohol. So yeah, I've been sober now for 13 plus years, and it's been, the best decision I've ever made. So it would have been better earlier, but you know what? I mean, it took what it took. I don't have regrets. And, if I had a time machine, though, that's probably what I would do.
Yeah. And I think it's a great just moment to have that mention, because we're rolling into the holidays, and as this gets released, maybe we're coming off of it. There's a lot of stress in the world. People are coping using, booze or whatever else it is. And I will say that, like, part of the reason I don't drink is because I don't feel like I need to anymore. I can have a lifestyle that's dry, quote unquote, and I could have a glass of wine if I wanted, but I have these opportunities to utilize all the tools in my toolkit. And even with breath work, right? People are doing transformational breath work and taking psilocybin and all these things that who knows if they will get legalized. If they do, you guys will have psilocybin breakthrough. But I'll do a breathwork session and I will have people utilizing like nootropics from you guys. And it creates and can elicit a brainwave state that feels healthy and that is like not with a hangover and isn't over the top or doesn't necessarily create any kind of trauma or micro trauma in people's lives. And that's really beautiful. And Mark's going to come down and speak at the Awaken Aware thing. You should come with him. Awaken Aware event that we're doing with Wild Health in February. And it's a beautiful opportunity for him to stand up and us to stand up and say, okay, today, this is what we're doing. We're going to listen to some lectures. Everybody, take your blue pill and your red pill, because we can do that in community and we can talk about what's in it and how it applies and make sure no one has contraindications and what have you. And so these are all of these beautiful things you've set up for us to be able to do in the world. So I think making a choice to take some dry time or to step into some sobriety in some way is a really interesting, it's like yet another experiment for people to try to see how they feel on the other side of that, right? Compare and contrast. So.
Yeah, out of all the there's not too many molecules I have not tried, even on the
on the illegal side.
Yeah, on the gray zone side. I would say really in retrospect, I think like alcohol is one of the worst. It's not the worst. I think there's some more damaging ones, but it's really one of the worst. Just so many better options. And maybe we can end on this. Let's just talk quickly about cannabinoids and sleep. So THC, first of all, I'm not a fan of THC, but THC became my drug of choice as I shifted from alcohol and I was smoking a quarter ounce a day in Vancouver. It was just completely ridiculous. But yeah, THC really is not a brain optimizer. Like the brain fuzz, the hangover, the lack of clarity, the impact on short-term memory, all of those things is really significant. So I'm not a fan of it at all. And the data on sleep is not very good, but CBD, CBN, CBG seem to have positive impacts for some people. So I'm a fan of cannabinoids. I think people should experiment with those. And you want a full spectrum. Like an isolate is useless. So typically you might have a micro amount of THC, like below 0.3 is typically the limit, which is fine. It does seem to amplify the effectiveness of the other, the CBD or the CBG or the CBN. But yeah, you really want to take a full spectrum, play around. I've probably tried like 80 different CBD, CBG, CBN blends, and the differences are massive. Like it's night and day. Every cannabinoid blend is like a different song. It's an orchestra playing different music. So you have to play around, and a lot of them are almost like stimulants for me. So that's why I don't typically use it that often. But I will say, here's my red eye sleep stack. Okay. It's 100 milligrams of CBD, a good CBD. I like Charlotte's Web. I think Charlotte's Web produces a good,
like a super CBD, right? When you're talking about blends, it's like a heavy on the CBD, and other ingredients are minimal.
Yeah, 100 milligrams, sleep breakthrough, dream optimizer. I'm out. I mean, I'll pass out like by the time the plane leaves. I'll typically pass out and wake up when I land. So, yeah, it's good. Anyways, we'll wrap up with that.
Beautiful. Yeah, really beautiful. Thanks for coming on and educating. Thanks for reminding us how easy it can be to go from sick to superhuman, for bringing these ingredients to the market, and just your team is always so fun. And I don't know how you've mastered the art of having a team that's super nerds as well as just super chill and really approachable. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing in the world, getting us all healthy.
It's a dream come true to work with people like Mark, Mr. Newts, like Monia, who runs our lab, Muhammad or Janan. Like, we're continually attracting these incredible geniuses at different things. And, I'm just trying to do my best to just coordinate all these geniuses and focus them a little bit. But yeah, it's amazing, and we're just going to continue expanding the teams and just bringing in more and more geniuses. So we're going to be coming out with a lot of new amazing things, including things we've been working on for years. So we'll be back, whether it's me, Wade, or Mark, or someone else, but we'll be back with some new breakthroughs. So stay tuned.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And then everyone knows where to find. Is there a place that they can find you? Like, should they be following you on social first? I know it's newtopia.com and we have a bunch of other things, but just so they know where they can start to follow the thread of all the work you're putting out.
Follow Boptimizers, follow Newtopia. I mean, frankly, I'm not very active on social. I just want to do things like, I have this massive hesitancy every time I think about posting something on social media, even if it's a story. I'm like, why am I doing this? So yeah,
you're doing what you love. Yeah, you're doing what you love, which is great. So yeah, follow Newtopia, follow Boptimizers. There's beautiful discount in the opening, and everybody can really get attached as I am to the things that you've served into the world, and have from sick to superhuman all the way. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.